Commerce Alive Today presents
Joanne Fabrics. The chain was founded in 1943 by two German immigrant families, the Rohrbachs and the Reichs. The Reichs had an importing business dealing in Swiss cheese, anchovy paste and pickles, and they invited their friends to start selling fabric in their suburban Cleveland storefront. When Berthold Rohrbach died that same year, his 30-year-old daughter, Alma Zimmerman, went to work full-time at the store with Hilda Reich. Hilda's daughter, Betty, joined the family business in 1947, and she and Alma opened the chain's second store in Cleveland soon thereafter. Betty married Martin Roscom in 1948, and he quit his upper-level management position at a knitting mill to join the fabric company. Co-founder Hilda Reich continued to supervise a Fabri-Center store until her death at the age of 87 in 1986. Alma, her husband, Freddie, and Betty continued to serve on the board of directors into the mid-1990s, but it was Martin Roscom who became a driving force behind the chain's continuous expansion throughout the Midwest. Seeking a less geographically exclusive name to take the chain into the Pittsburgh area, the families created Joanne by merging two of their children's names, Joe from Joan Zimmerman and Ann from Jackie and Roscom. Fabri-Center's small specialty stores, which were often located in the regional shopping malls that sprung up in the post-war era, competed well with the fabric departments of larger general merchandise stores. The chain incorporated as Cleveland Fabric Shops Incorporated in February 1951, changing its name to Fabri-Centers of America Incorporated in 1968 and going public the following year. In 1998, the company changed its name to Joanne Stores Incorporated. The chain was founded in 1943 by two German immigrant families, the Rohrbachs and the Reichs. The Reichs had an importing business dealing in Swiss cheese, anchovy paste and pickles, and they invited their friends to start selling fabric in their suburban Cleveland storefront. When Berthold Rohrbach died that same year, his 30-year-old daughter, Alma Zimmerman, went to work full-time at the store with Hilda Reich. Hilda's daughter, Betty, joined the family business in 1947, and she and Alma opened the chain's second store in Cleveland soon thereafter. Betty married Martin Roscom in 1948, and he quit his upper-level management position at a knitting mill to join the fabric company. Co-founder Hilda Reich continued to supervise a Fabri-Center store until her death at the age of 87 in 1986. Alma, her husband, Freddie, and Betty continued to serve on the board of directors into the mid-1990s, but it was Martin Roscom who became a driving force behind the chain's continuous expansion throughout the Midwest. Seeking a less geographically exclusive name to take the chain into the Pittsburgh area, the families created Joanne by merging two of their children's names, Joe from Joan Zimmerman and Ann from Jackie and Roscom. Fabri-Center's small specialty stores, which were often located in the regional shopping malls that sprung up in the post-war era, competed well with the fabric departments of larger general merchandise stores. The chain incorporated as Cleveland Fabric Shops Incorporated in February 1951, changing its name to Fabri-Centers of America Incorporated in 1968 and going public the following year. In 1998, the company changed its name to Joanne Stores Incorporated. That's when the company found its profit margins squeezed by rising costs and a maturing market. Fabric retailers had historically been recession-resistant. Stung by the high cost of retail clothing, many women flocked to fabric stores to make their own clothes during economic downturns, but when the economy went sour in the early 1980s, manufacturers of ready-to-wear apparel slashed their own prices, eradicating any homemade savings and taking the wind out of fabric retailers' sails. Rampant price cutting in the retail fabric industry exacerbated the effects of the early 1980s recession. When Alan Roscom succeeded his father as president and CEO of the company in 1985, Fabri-Center's net profit margin was less than 0.5%. While sales continued to rise, from $209.4 million in fiscal 1984 to $239.4 million in fiscal 1987. Net income declined from $4.5 million to $1.7 million. The slide culminated in a net loss of $4.9 million on $266.7 million sales in fiscal 1988. It was the first loss in the chain's 45-year history. The new president admitted to Delinda Carl of the Cleveland Plain Dealer in May 1988 that, all of a sudden, our business started shrinking and our expenses started rising. Roscom launched a multifaceted turnaround plan that year. His was a risky proposition attempted by many of his rivals with varying degrees of success in the late 1980s and early 1990s. A key to the strategy was a wholesale move of its stores from high-rent, relatively small shops in malls to large, superstores, in strip malls. In fiscal 1992 alone, Fabry Centers opened 121 superstores with up to 15,000 square feet of space and closed 108 outmoded locations. However, Fabry Centers wasn't the only chain with growth on its mind. Its 6 major competitors were also adding dozens of big stores, leading inexorably to a glut of the mature market. Casualties of these hard-fought fabric wars began to mount. By the mid-1990s, only Fabry Centers and Hancock Fabrics were left standing. Both House of Fabrics and Piece Goods shops were mired in bankruptcy, and many of the other former leaders were either bought out or liquidated. Fabry Centers came out on top, but not without its share of bruises and scars. In an effort to diversify from the stagnant fabric market, which stood at about $4 billion throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, the company launched Cargo Express, a chain of specialty housewares, in 1984. Spearheaded by Alan Roscom, this discount chain sold cutlery, stemware, glassware, and other tableware in 18 stores by 1988. In spite of its growth, the concept didn't record an annual profit until fiscal 1990, and Roscom characterized the business as a break-even venture, accounting for less than 3% of Fabry Centers' overall sales in 1992. Heavy discounting and intense competition in the category forced Fabry Centers to put the 41-store operation on the selling block in 1993. Unable to find a buyer, the executives liquidated the inventory and closed the stores in 1994, taking a $5.2 million loss on the transaction. Cargo Express' protracted failure combined with the generally poor condition of the retail fabric industry contributed to a sharp and rapid decline in Fabry Centers' stock price. The company's stock fell from a high of $47.25 in January 1992, when Fabry Centers announced record high earnings of $17.5 million, down to less than $13 by that July. Before the year was out, Standard & Poor's had lowered its rating of Fabry Centers' paper to junk bond status. CEO Roscom reacted quickly, cutting salaries on a sliding scale and eliminating some administrative staffers. Other more fundamental changes that had already been instituted as part of the turnaround program of the late 1980s would be the factors that kept Fabry Centers at the top of the fabric game in the mid-1990s. Efficiency efforts included construction of a new distribution center and creation of a state-of-the-art computer system that linked operations from the point of sale to the warehouse. From 1987 to 1990, these efforts helped reduce overhead by 20%, from 48% of sales to 40% of sales. The chain also experimented with deep discount best fabric outlets, aired its first television commercials, and launched a custom drapery business. Fabry Centers also found a profitable and logical diversification niche in the crafting boom of the 1990s. The craft segment, encompassing everything from seasonal and holiday decorations to home decor, multiplied from $2 billion in 1990 to more than $10 billion by 1995. Along with several other industry observers, CEO Roscom attributed the boom to the cocooning trend that found families spending more time at home. Craft goods contributed nearly one-third of Fabry Centers' annual sales by that time. Fabry Center solidified its position at the top of the retail fabric heap with the 1994 acquisition of fourth-ranking Cloth World's 343 stores from Brown Group Incorporated. The $100 million cash purchase fleshed out Fabry Center's presence in the southern United States, bringing it to 48 states. The transaction increased the chain's debt, but it also positioned Fabry Centers to become a category killer, a destination store whose enormous selection and low prices draws customers. The chain expected to spend 18 months and up to $45 million to convert the Cloth World stores to the Fabry Centers format, although they kept their well-established name. CEO Roskam called the deal an enormous growth opportunity for Fabry Centers. The chain emerged from its industry's shakeout in relatively good health. Over the course of the early 1990s, Fabry Center's sales increased 83.3%, from $368.6 million in fiscal 1991 to $677.3 million in fiscal 1995. Profits, meanwhile, had not yet regained the $17.5 million record set in fiscal 1991, slipping to a low of $2.2 million in fiscal 1994 and amounting to $11.7 million in fiscal 1995. While Fabry Centers was considerably larger than second-ranking Hancock Fabrics, according to a February 1995 article in Barron's, the Cleveland-based chain had a higher debt load, lower market value, and lower profitability, proving that bigger is not always better. Alan Roskam, who was in his mid-40s in the mid-1990s, hoped to turn that adage on its ear in the latter years of the decade. In 1998, Fabry Centers reached a turning point. The company purchased 250 House of Fabrics stores, its biggest purchase deal to that date, raising its total number of stores to 1,060. More than half of these stores were designated Jo-Ann Fabrics and Crafts, while the rest operated under 6 different names: Cloth World, Fabry Centers of America, Fabricking, Fabricland, House of Fabrics, New York Fabrics, and Sofro Fabrics. The company carried an $180 million debt load, including $106 million stemming from the House of Fabrics purchase, which raised the company's debt-to-total capital ratio to 50%. Consolidation and elimination of redundancies was clearly in order. In June 1998, shareholders approved a name change to strengthen the company's brand and unify its corporate identity, and the business began operating as Jo-Ann Fabrics. All stores were promptly converted to the new name. Jo-Ann closed the House of Fabrics administrative offices and 90 Fabry Centers stores, then consolidated another 90 overlapping former House of Fabrics and Fabry Centers stores. Realizing that most of their customers sewed as a hobby rather than as a necessity, Jo-Ann decided in 1999 to focus on expanding the superstore concept to be called Jo-Ann Etc., gradually replacing traditional fabrics-only stores with 45,000 square foot outlets that presented sewing goods and general craft merchandise. The superstore plan met with initial success. Whereas 12,000 to 20,000 square foot traditional stores produced only $99 in sales per square foot, the expanded inventory superstores generated $150 to $170 in revenues per square foot. Laura Richardson, an analyst for the Winston-Salem, North Carolina, firm BB&T Capital Markets, told Henry Gomez of Crane's Cleveland business, "What I like is that Jo-Ann has a well-known brand name for sewing already. And there's no one else in both the fabrics and crafts business. Jo-Ann is a unique animal in the retail world." Analyst Michael Corelli of the New York investment advisor firm Barry Vogel Associates told Gomez, "I doubt highly that guys like Michael's would get into the side. I think it's going to be a great high market share for Jo-Ann. On the craft side, Jo-Ann can differentiate itself as a one-stop shop." The sewing craft split and the emphasis on superstores had their downsides, however. The higher volume done by the superstores severely taxed the company's existing distribution facilities, and the smaller traditional stores found themselves bulging with the additional line of craft products. To handle the flood of new merchandise, a $33 million computer system that combined financial, merchandising, and retail applications into a single platform was put in place in May 2000. Inevitably, problems followed, intensifying the difficulties at store level. Inventory glitches in the new system mixed up store orders. Understocked stores were starved of goods while fully stocked locations received large, unnecessary deliveries. Merchandise counts in orders flip-flopped, causing quantities of lower-performing goods and sparse amounts of higher-performing goods to be sent to stores, bringing stock problems to an unprecedented level of confusion. Brian Carney, Jo-Ann's CEO, remarked to Shannon Mortland of Crane's Cleveland business in February 2002, adding, "We really exceeded our capacity for distribution." The bugs in the new system were likely also responsible for a jump in shrinkage, that is, inventory losses due to theft, vendor fraud, damage, and inventory errors. The average rate of shrinkage in the retail industry is about 1.8% of sales. In 2001, Jo-Ann's shrinkage rate was 2.5% of sales. A level the company's vice president of finance Don Tomoff termed drastic. As a result of these difficulties, the company posted a loss of $13.6 million. Jo-Ann immediately set about implementing a recovery plan in January 2001. The company put a moratorium on new store openings and focused on paying down debt and fine-tuning existing stores and its merchandise mix. About 10,000 redundant or underperforming SKUs were permanently removed from inventory and placed on clearance sale. 10,000 square feet were trimmed off of the superstore concept, and the layout the remaining 35,000 square feet was re-engineered, placing the 4 chief departments of the store floral design, home decor, scrapbooking, and quilting in each corner of the building and the fabric department in the middle. Fabric cutting tables occupying the center of the store were designed to act as a community center, where sales associates and customers could gather and discuss ideas and products. The massive clearancing program and costs associated with closing redundant stores resulted in a $14.9 million loss in 2001. The recovery efforts worked, however. Jo-Ann posted net income of $44.9 million in 2002 and paid down over $100 million of its $203 million debt. Jo-Ann celebrated its 60th anniversary in 2003 as a profitable company. A total of 892 stores, including 806 traditional stores and 86 superstores, brought in a net income of $41 million. The company's debt-to-total capital ratio reached 24.7%, the goal set 3 years previous in Jo-Ann's recovery plan. By the beginning of 2005, the company operated 851 stores, including 737 traditional outlets and 114 superstores, which brought in a net income $46.2 million in 2004. Steady increases in sales brought about the need for another distribution center. Scheduled to open in 2006, the $45 million, 700,000 square foot center in Opelika, AL, represented a major investment in cutting-edge distribution technology for Jo-Ann. The center, which was designed to move a third of the company's inventory, served developing markets in Texas and other southern states. Jo-Ann was not going to repeat the inventory fiasco that followed its first major push into the superstore concept. Darrell Webb became chairman and CEO of annfabrics in March 2006. Jo-Ann Stores announced plans to sell out to private equity firm Leonard Green Partners for $1.6 billion on March 23, 2010, and was delisted from the stock exchange in March 2011. Darrell Webb resigned in March 2011 and Travis Smith was promoted to CEO after joining the company in March 2006. Travis Smith announced his resignation in March 2014. The company's CFO, Jim Kerr, agreed to become CEO until a replacement was found. Jo-Ann Stores named Jill Soltau as president, CEO, and a member of the company board of directors in March 2015. Under Soltau's leadership, the retailer opposed President Trump's tariffs, citing American manufacturers not being able to meet Jo-Ann's quality or volume needs. She joined 7 other retail CEOs at a meeting with the administration where they discussed how the tariff would raise consumer prices and hurt businesses. Jo-Ann Stores rebranded to Jo-Ann in March 2018. Soltau left Jo-Ann Stores in March 2018. Wade Miquelon became president, CEO, and a member of the board of directors in March 2019. In March 2019, Jo-Ann partnered with Goldie Blocks for a monthly subscription box called the Goldie Blocks Box to help children ages 8 and up to develop STEM skills. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the chain lost $546.6 million in its 2019 fiscal year. However, by the end of the 2020 fiscal year, it made $210.9 million to $212.9 million and added 9 million new customers. The increase in sales is credited to mask mandates and an increased interest in do-it-yourself projects. In March 2021, Jo-Ann made plans to create an e-commerce facility in West Jefferson, Ohio to better serve its online sales. On March 16, 2021, Jo-Ann went public on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol JOAN. Leonard Green Partners retained a majority stake in the company, allowing it to nominate up to 5 members of the board of directors. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Jo-Ann received public criticism for keeping many of their stores open amidst health concerns for elderly customers and refusing paid sick leave for employees affected by COVID-19. Jo-Ann defended themselves in a statement by claiming that their free mask kits helped local hospitals, which allowed the stores to be considered essential business. Despite many hospitals rejecting homemade masks, Michigan's governor, Gretchen Whitmer, forced stores to close down in the state after Jo-Ann sent a letter requesting to not be included in stay-at-home orders. Whitmer stressed that the same materials used to create masks are able to be sold online without in-person contact. Most of the materials used in the free mask kits were later revealed to be remnants, which are often sold by Jo-Ann at a discount, leading some media outlets to disparage the program as just scraps from the clearance bin. In September 2023, Jo-Ann announced it would lay off an unspecified number of administrative employees. In October 2023, Fitch Ratings and Credit Risk Monitor reported that Jo-Ann was nearing a potential Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing. That month, Jo-Ann was handed a delisting notice from Nasdaq as its stock share price fell below $1 per share, and stated that if Jo-Ann was unable to get its shares up to $1 or above, its stock would be delisted from the Nasdaq. Jo-Ann filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on March 18, 2024. The company planned to cut over $500 million in debt and restructure into a privately held company. It planned to complete its filing by late April with no employees or stores affected. Nasdaq halted the trading of the company's stock on March 28, and on April 9, Jo-Ann was formally delisted from the exchange. The company's reorganization plan was approved by a federal judge on April 25, and Jo-Ann emerged from bankruptcy as a private company. On January 15, 2025, Jo-Ann filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection for the second time in less than a year. The company cited continued declining sales as a contribution to its second filing. Stores were expected to remain open throughout the procedure as the company attempts to shed its debt by $500 million. On February 12, 2025, Jo-Ann announced the closure of 500 of its remaining 800 locations, in an effort to right-size the company's footprint. 61 of the locations slated for closure are in California, while Florida, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania will each see more than 30 Jo-Ann locations close. On February 24, 2025, it was announced that Jo-Ann would liquidate the remaining 300 locations after failing to find a buyer. Its assets will be sold to GA Group, a private equity firm.
The sun, your shades, a rainbow in the palm of your hand, something cozy, someplace homey, Whatever you dream, you can create. At Joanne, we have the inspiration, the notions, and ideas outside the box. And now, patio and garden accessories are 40% off. Come on out and play. Joanne Fabrics and Crafts and Joanne ETC.
If you have any fond memories, please indicate it at the comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and like.